Chapter 1 The Weight of the Crown. The shimmering waters of the ocean kingdom, Aquaris, stretched endlessly below the surface, a beautiful, vibrant world where creatures of the deep swam freely, and the kingdom's coral palace stood tall like a beacon. Underneath its gleaming towers in the royal chambers, Paisley sat at her vanity, her reflection staring back at her with a mixture of longing and uncertainty. The delicate crown atop her seaweed-coloured hair felt heavier than it ever had before, and the burden of her 17th birthday lingered in her mind. Her father, King Trenton, was a powerful man, a king whose decisions shaped their underwater kingdom, and today his expectations weighed heavily on her. The words he had spoken this morning echoed in her ears. "You will marry Prince Orion, continue our legacy, and become queen." It wasn't a request nor a suggestion, it was a command, one that Paisley knew had been brewing since she was a child. But her heart screamed a different truth, one that she had barely mustered the courage to voice. The expectations of a princess. The soft coral breeze of Aquaris blew through the open windows, swirling with bubbles and carrying the songs of the mermaids outside, who celebrated her birthday. They all saw her as their perfect princess, a future queen who would lead them with grace, who would marry a prince and secure the kingdom's prosperity. But Paisley's reflection didn't show a perfect princess. It showed a girl, uncertain, confused, and deeply conflicted. Her green sea glass eyes looked tired, rimmed with the stress of living a life she hadn't chosen. She ran her hand over the cool stone of the vanity, her fingers trembling slightly. She thought of her mother, the one person who might have understood her. Her mother, who had been taken by humans so many years ago, never to return. The loss was a wound that hadn't healed, but more than that, Paisley still held out hope that her mother might be alive. But even her father had given up searching, resigned to the belief that she had been killed by humans after they had finished experimenting on her. Paisley clenched her fists at the thought of humans, a mixture of fear and anger swirling within her. She didn't know if she hated them or pitied them for what they did. But something deep inside her whispered that her mother wasn't gone, that she could still be found. Yet that hope was buried under the pressure of her father's expectations she wasn't sure she could ever fulfill. Coming to terms with herself, the truth Paisley had hidden for years rose in her throat like a tidal wave ready to crash. She wasn't like the other mermaids who swooned over princes and dreamt of their perfect royal weddings. No, she was different. She had always known deep down that she didn't want to marry a prince, didn't want to be with any man at all. She had never told her father, never dared to speak the truth out loud until today. Her heart raced at the thought of what she was about to do. She knew it would change everything. "Paisley, it's time," came the voice of her father from the hall. His tone was stern, regal as it always was. He expected her to walk out with a smile, to accept the arranged marriage like the obedient daughter he believed she was. Taking a deep breath, Paisley pushed herself up from the vanity. The flowing silver gown she wore shimmered in the watery light, a gift from the royal tailors for her birthday. It felt heavy, too perfect, too constricting, just like the life her father wanted her to live. The confrontation. She found her father waiting for her in the grand hall, his posture straight, eyes stern, and every inch of him the king. He stood near the large windows of the palace where the vibrant blues and greens of the ocean beyond made the kingdom seem infinite. "Father," she began, her voice wavering but determined. King Trenton turned to her, his brow furrowing slightly. "Is everything all right, Paisley?" It was now or never. "I can't marry Prince Orion," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, but steady enough to make her father's eyes narrow in confusion. Trenton crossed the room toward her, his expression hardening. "What do you mean you can't? This is your duty, Paisley. You know what's expected of you." "I know what's expected of me," she replied, her fingers twisting nervously at the hem of her gown. "But it's not what I want. I'm not like everyone else, Father. I don't want to marry a prince. I don't want to marry a man at all." There she had said it. The words hung in the water between them, heavy and charged with a truth that had been buried for far too long. King Trenton's eyes flickered with surprise, then confusion, then something else, something that Paisley couldn't quite read. Silence stretched for what felt like an eternity. "You're saying—" He trailed off, trying to understand. "I'm saying that I'm a lesbian, Father," Paisley said, her voice firm now. "I've always been. I don't want a husband. I don't want Prince Orion." Her father's expression softened just for a moment, and then it returned to its usual sternness. "Paisley, you are the heir to the throne. The kingdom needs you to fulfill your duty. You must marry to secure our future." "I don't want that future." Paisley's voice cracked with emotion. "I want to be free to live my life the way I choose, not the way tradition dictates. I want to find love on my own terms." Trenton sighed deeply, his strong shoulders slumping just a bit. "I accepted your truth when you were young, Paisley. I accepted that you're different. But you are still my daughter, and you are still destined to be queen." Her heart sank. She had hoped, prayed that he would understand, that he would let her live her life without forcing her into a role she didn't want. But now it was clear. Her father would never let her choose. He would never let her be free. Running from duty, with tears stinging her eyes, Paisley turned away from him, her chest tightening with the realization that she couldn't stay here any longer. She couldn't live in this world where her father's expectations overshadowed her truth. Without another word, she swam out of the palace, the sea around her blurring as she sped through the water, the storm that had been brewing in the distance now roaring overhead. Her heart pounded in her chest as the waves above began to swell, the currents tugging at her. She had no idea where she was going, only that she needed to be far, far away from the kingdom, from the crown, from everything that held her captive. Into the storm, as the storm grew more violent, Paisley swam toward the surface, desperate for air, desperate for a new beginning. The waves tossed her about, and for a moment she lost all sense of direction. A fierce current pulled her up, and in the chaos she broke the surface, gasping for breath as the wind and rain lashed at her. Then in a flash everything went black.